Hello, it's Barbara Rusconi again, and we're going to be talking about Module 2, 5 Costly Mistakes if you don't brand with influence. So welcome to Branding with Influence, and let's get started. Branding with influence can give you a golden egg, and we talked about standing out. By the way, if you're ever looking for a good visual to use, apparently golden eggs are quite effective. So we have a golden egg here, and we're going to talk about the 5 most costly mistakes. And so what we really want to do is we want to focus on doing things right. So I'm going to tell you what you absolutely must not do and what you can do differently. So yesterday we talked about the 7 big benefits of branding with influence, and to go over those again: stand out, build trust, infuse value, attract ideal clients, save time and money, convey confidence, and streamline your strategy. So today is 5 costly mistakes, and the next module will be 3 myths and 3 truths. So let's get started. The first most costly mistake is undervaluing branding. And what we see here are a pair of what could be just sneakers. If we didn't have that Converse All-Star on there, they would just be shoes, right? So we really want to think about how can we value branding more. And these are the big mistakes that most people make. A lot of people think branding is just logos. So a brand is a logo. It's that Converse star that you saw, the circle. Brands are more than logos. They're not just a logo. And that is a really big mistake, because a brand is really every touch in the entire customer experience. So it's not just a design that you have that you're going to use on your website. The next thing is confusing marketing with branding. Marketing is a really, really complex place right now. There are so many different ways to market, so many different channels. You've got to think about creative, you've got to think about design, you've got to think about distribution and measurement. It's really a big mix of things. And branding is different. As I said, it's the customer experience. And the last part is ignoring opportunities with branding. So if you're undervaluing branding and you're undervaluing branding with influence, and you are thinking that a brand is just a logo, that marketing is just enough, and you're ignoring opportunities to work with influencers, I don't want you to do that. I guess one thing to ask is, will it blend? And really, branding with influence is about blending in. And when you think about will it blend, that whole campaign, that just took the brand to another level. It was all kinds of things that were being blended, Legos, calculators, everything. So think about, will your brand blend? And when you think about that, another mistake is being too bold or too boring. I probably see too boring a little bit more than being too bold. And the ways to get it wrong are to have mismatched signals. So for instance, if you have a high value luxury brand and you are coming across as like a medium or low market, that's going to be a mismatch. And the opposite is true too. Then if you have outdated messages, this is another one. Things are changing all the time with look and feel. Fonts change from year to year. Colors change from year to year. So if your branding and your messaging is more than even like a year or 2 old, it's time to refresh. And you lose focus and credibility. So I've got loose focus, which I guess it's a typo, but it actually works, I think, because if the focus is loose and it's not tight on what you're doing, if you are too bold, then you are going to push some people away. And it's fun to be bold and zingy, but that's not what you always want to do. It might be if you have a company that's about t-shirts or beer flavors or something, but you really want to strike the right balance of being somewhere between too bold and too boring is just right. That's where you want to be. The next big mistake is lacking consistency. So never the same twice. Are you the type of brand that changes their look, their sound. Maybe you work on a lot of different projects or maybe you have a lot of different courses or programs. And so you're always changing it up. That's okay as long as your overarching brand remains stable and steady. But if you're changing it up and mixing it up to see what people react to, that is going to cause people to just go away. And then you're working with the wrong influencers. And influencer marketing is a whole nother topic, a really deep topic that I love to talk about. Here, I'm just going to touch on it pretty quickly and give you a real tiny, tiny insight. So wrong influencers. What are wrong influencers? Well, they would be influencers who don't match your brand's values. They could be influencers. Maybe you're thinking, oh, I need to work with a really big influencer. Well, that's okay. But, actually studies have shown that the bigger the influencer, the less interaction there is with their community. So smaller is better. And another thing is that I see a big mistake with influencers is people and brands tend to work on only one project, one event, one goal, and it should be an ongoing relationship if you want to do it right. You can also think of yourself as an influencer. And if you sell affiliate products, maybe there's a product you think you would like to promote, but is it one that you really use? Would you really recommend that your best contacts or your best friends use it? If not, you don't want to recommend it. And then another thing is changing too much. It kind of ties into the same one, but changing too much just means that you really are on a tide of upheaval. And there is a point, I know, where you need to pivot and do things differently. That's fine. But if you're pivoting all the time, then what happens is people just give up. They just don't know what to do. And one way that maybe you're changing too much is maybe you're changing industries. So maybe you think you're going to work in education, then you're going to work in manufacturing, then you're going to work in financial services, So really think about how you can keep your brand and your influence central to what it is that you like to do. Because if you lack consistency, you're going to lack business. The next one is thinking too small. And I do see this a lot. You might think, oh, I'm one person or I'm a small company. Or even if you're looking for a job, you might think, oh, I'm just one little person. That's not how it works. Really, we are in a bigger place. You might even imagine, even if you think of yourself as one person, you are, that's right. But Google makes it so everyone can know who you are if they want to find you. And if you are a company, mini budgets don't work. That's one of the biggest frustrations as a creative consultant, is going in and having companies say, what can you do for this small amount of money? And I'm all about getting the best for your investment. I do agree. I think that's fantastic. I don't want people to waste money, but I do want them to invest wisely. And I do want them to understand that you do have to have some investment to have growth and to make an impact. So micro versus macro influence, I talked about that a little bit before, but think about, what is your influence? Are you thinking you really want to be a tiny group? And you know what? If you have a tiny group and the top influencers in your industry and they're all your friends, maybe you're in the same mastermind, that is super powerful, super powerful. But do you want to have something that's bigger, broader? So that's really, you need to think about where is the right fit for you. And for local businesses, local is still global. And it's always, when I talk to local business owners and they say, well, I work in this county or this zip code is my best. That's great, but local is still global. So you have to think of yourself as a brand with influence on a local, national, global stage, because you are. And if you're not, you can be. So don't think small. Think about how big you could really be, because even one little tiny interaction, there's a Butterfly Marketing by Mike Filsaime. He talks about how one action can really launch huge, huge opportunities. And he got that from the way a butterfly moves its wings. So really think even small interactions can really pay off in big ways. So don't be afraid of big brands. And, really, you just never know. I went to a movie, Brave. It was sponsored by Disney. It was for moms who blog. And so I was a mom influencer, even though my kid was in high school. And I thought, you know, he's too old for this. But I took him and a friend who had a daughter to go see this movie, Brave, and it was sponsored by Disney. And I wrote a blog post about it as a thank you. And that blog post, small action, but it wound up being searched and found by someone who was looking for a keynote speaker at a conference for 400 people. So I got a great speaking opportunity out of that. And in that audience was a person who was looking for keynote speakers at a conference in, guess where? Disney World in Florida. So you just never know. One little thing can really prolong itself into a really, really big impact. So just think of yourself as bigger than you are. And the last big mistake I see is DIY, or do it yourself. So DIY is okay if you want to do your branding and you want to work with influencers or work on your own level of influence, but there is a huge margin for error, huge. And if you do it wrong, it's not going to work out for you. You could really miss out on a lot of great opportunities. So then learning versus implementing. If you're like me, I love learning. I just love taking courses. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. But then when you're done, guess what? You have to implement. And if you don't implement, nothing happens. So that's another problem with DIY. And then costly mistakes. So it always helps to have someone help you audit what you're doing. And I would recommend you try that. But really think about, you know, what is it really worth trying to do it yourself? So that's a wrap. And just to run through the 5 biggest mistakes that we covered today, the first one is undervaluing branding by thinking brands are only logos, and confusing marketing with branding, and then ignoring opportunities. So that's the first one, is undervaluing branding. The second is being too bold or too boring with your branding and your influence. And when you're not in just the right spot, then you can send out mismatched signals, outdated messages, and you can cause your best target clients to lose focus, and you'll lose credibility too. So don't want to do that. The number 3 biggest mistake is lacking consistency. Never the same twice. You're working with the wrong influencers, and you're changing too much. And then number 4 is thinking too small, tiny. And when you think about small, mini budgets don't work. We talked about micro versus macro influence, and local is still global. So just think about it. You are a global player. And the last biggest mistake is DIY, or do it yourself. Why? Because there is a huge margin for error. And then there's also the time you need with learning versus implementing. I mean, let's face it, these courses sound really fun. And I know there was one I looked at, and it comes with something like 35 checklists. And I thought, wow, that's great. And then I thought, whoa, that's ridiculous. That's a lot. So think about learning versus implementing. And then think about the costly mistakes you might make if you try and do it yourself. So yesterday we talked about all the benefits. So you know all the benefits of branding with influence. Today, the biggest mistakes. And then we're going to be talking about module 3 next, which is the 3 myths and the 3 truths. So that's it for today. Thanks so much. And I look forward to picking it up where we left off in module 3.